In the last program, which seems like it was about 10 years ago, we talked about the Trans-Pacific Partnership and some of these other trade deals, and that's actually very big in the news right now. But it's sort of an up-in-the-air thing. I wouldn't want to delve into it because by the time you get this show, it may have changed. But the interesting part about it is how it has sort of changed who's on what side amongst the various government officials. In other words, the president is lining up mostly with Republicans in pushing this bill, and it's mostly Democrats that are against him. And he has been, and I have a bunch of stories on this, I'm not even going to go there, but he's been actually sort of taking pot shots at his own party and calling them names. I mean, it's relatively unprecedented, especially when you have to work with those people again. Nonetheless, what's fascinating is I go to a lot of different news sites, as you probably understand. And by the way, I'm going to start using some that have usually been on my don't use list because I used to think of them as more tabloid, but now you're getting some decent stories out of some of these places occasionally. And sites that I used to think were pretty good have descended into tabloidism and are not useful anymore. So don't be surprised if I start throwing a few different sources out here because they've hired some interesting writers. But nonetheless, in this case, I was on a bunch of these conservative websites, and of course, I love the comment section underneath the story where the readers can comment and give feedback. And it was one of those sites where generally the feedback is about how Obama's born in Africa, and he's trying to take down the country, and liberals are destroying the earth, and, whatever it might be. And on this Trade-Pacific Partnership thing, and the story was about the Democrats opposing President Obama and the Republicans, and they were, comment after comment after comment was saying, I never saw it. That's the big line. I never thought I'd say this, but, and then they went on to praise the Democrats and to slam the GOP people that were lining up with the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and of course, slam the president too. Things weren't that different. But to me, as I've always said, folks, we as the American people, and, I'm starting to think this is a more global phenomenon. The more I watch what happens in Washington, D.C., almost like a dropping a big stone in water, and you watch the wave of what we're doing then reach foreign shores. And you see, for example, Britain is a wonderful example of a country you see literally having these waves of American security changes sweep over them too. And in some ways, they seem ahead of where we are even. So maybe this applies to all of us. But we're all kind of in this together. And one of the things that prevents us from addressing the biggest problems is that we are divided in the oldest play in military manuals anywhere, the divide and conquer idea. And they divide us into left and right and conservative and liberal. And there are divisions, folks. There are. Different views of how you think society should be organized. Really basic bedrock things. But nobody I've ever found is pro-corruption. Nobody I've ever found thinks that the government, I take that back. Most people, I have found a few people, most people don't think that the people should basically be almost a symbolic voice or that the people should be able to control policy at the margins, but the main core policy is really out of their hands. Try changing U.S. foreign policy, right? There are very few people you will run into that if you say, should the American people be allowed to change U.S. foreign policy, who will say, oh, no, the American people shouldn't be allowed to do that. Good luck finding those people. Even the ones who believe it won't say it because it's really, disconcerting and unpopular to say that, but it's true. How could you get that power back? Well, it would require Republicans and Democrats and liberals and conservatives and all these weird independent Martian people like me in between understanding that we all have a shared interest in a clean system. Lawrence Lessig, I think, makes a very good point in his book, Republic Lost, which, by the way, is free on the internet now, and you can check it out, where he goes and says, how corruption is hurting liberal ideas is one section. But then he's got another section on how the corruption is hurting conservative causes. And he's trying to do the same thing, which is to point out that no matter what you think, a corrupt system isn't going to give it to you. You've got to fix the structure before things can work within the structure. And reading those comments at the end of that article was heartwarming because you start to tell yourself that people are so entrenched in their ideas that even if the other side adopted their entire platform, they'd still be forced to say, effing Democrats or fascist Republicans, wouldn't even care. It's a totem, as they say in psychology, when you learn in Psychology 101 about totems and these party labels are sometimes so connected to people's self-image of themselves that it's really sort of divorced from the actual policy questions, right? I'm a Democrat or I'm a Republican, and this is how I see myself, and this is how I project myself to others. And if the other political party actually adopted the platform of my political party, I still probably couldn't support them because, well, I'm not that party, right? I'm not that kind of guy. That's not who I am. Everyone knows I'm a blank. So I think seeing those comments at the end of those very conservative news stories, it warmed the cockles of my Martian independent heart, maybe. I think I keep a little tote board in my head of things that, are evidence that people can work together and we can create some kind of unity, which is the only way we're going to fix a bunch of these problems. And I also keep sort of a tote board of evidence in my head that we can't. And so this is one I can put in the, hey, it can happen side of the ledger and provide a little good news for a program that doesn't always push the good news out there.